This is Detroit's Darkest Times. My name is Slick. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And here's my story. I grew up on Trumbull Street in Detroit, Michigan. My first crossroads was Canfield and Trumbull. My school was Edmondson Elementary. My principal was Pansy Pantano. Vice principal was Mr. Smith. And in this school was a lot of activity going on in this school when I was attending. We had dances to go to, and the dances at the time, you just took a canned food to the dance. And what they would do with the canned food is just feed the hunger. Donate to the Hunger Foundation. And they would give it out to people in need for food and stuff like that. And there was 7 of us kids in our family. And I remember when we used to get ready to go for the dance, everybody had to get a canned food. And we would go through the canned food after asking our parents, was it okay? But nobody really wanted to give up the canned food, because people would grab a canned food and they'd be like, no, don't take that. That's good. So, and I remember that just like it was yesterday. And but eventually we all had to get a canned food, and there wasn't too many times in our house that we didn't have decent canned food. You know what I mean? So it wasn't. Just the main thing is, we'd want to keep the good ones, but some things that they made with dinner and stuff like that, mostly all young kids would kind of shy away from, you know what I mean? But for the most part, we had all the good brands of canned food. But I just get a kick out of thinking about that back in the day. We would argue about what canned food we'd take for the dance. And then when we get to the dance, there was a ton of people that went to it. Basically, everybody, It ain't like today's dances at school where just some people go and some people stay out. And back in them days, everybody went. It was something to do. And everybody was active back in them days. But that was just a good experience at Edmondson. And also I had got into this kid in school. He didn't like me for some reason. So me and him had got into a fight on the playground. And we actually got into fights all the time. His name was Ricardo. And we fought all the time, every day for a good long time. And then we finally just became friends after the fact. And then he had started getting in a fight with another friend of mine. And this guy's name was Kerry that went to Edmondson Elementary. And one day, Kerry had a younger brother, Bo. And I used to run around with both of them. But, as time passed, I ran around with Bo the most. But anyways, Bo was telling me that one day they were walking home from school, and Ricardo and some of his friends was following behind them, and then they get by the red light. They cross the red light over across Trumbull, and they're on Canfield, and there's like a abandoned apartment building there, and there's some loose bricks laying on the ground, stuff like that. Well, Ricardo picks up a brick and then hollers at him and then smashes it in his mouth. And once this happened, he goes home and his dad has to take him to the doctor. And Bo's telling me the story because I wasn't there with him. And he takes him to the doctor and stuff like that. And then they do what they got to do with him and stuff. I think he has some upcoming dentist appointments and stuff like that. So that brick really, messed him up for a while. But anyways, after time passed, his dad takes him to Ricardo's house, and he tells Ricardo's dad to have him come out on the sidewalk so Ricardo and Kerry can fight it out, a fair fight, basically. And he yells for his son, but his son don't want to come out, so he don't come out the house. And then later on after that, I believe they moved out of the neighborhood because I didn't see them anymore after that. But that was just one situation that went on at Edmondson. And then there was some boys that actually, this was right before school started. This was like summer vacation. And there were some boys had broke out the principal's office windows. And there was a whole group of us, and we was just, roaming around the neighborhood. We happened to be on the school property, and this was on summer vacation. Like, I think it was 1 day or 2 days before school started. And it was a whole group of us, but some of the guys had actually stayed behind, and we had, went ahead and left, and they broke out the principal's windows out of the office. Well, then, when first day of school came, stuff like that, everybody got took to the office. And the reason is they had a janitor in the school at the time that it happened. And he just, basically pointed out all the guys that he seen out the window, but some of us wasn't the guys who actually broke out the window. It was some other guys, but everybody got suspended from school. First, we all had to clean up the principal's office. Then we got suspended from school, and we tried to explain to them that we wasn't the ones who broke out the window, but with the janitor seeing everybody together, I guess they just felt like, well, if y'all was all together, you're all guilty. You know what I mean? something like that. And we was young cats at the time. And but anyways, that had happened. We had got kicked out. And they usually did like a 3-day suspension, something like that. Sometimes 5-day suspension. But that had happened, and really we got falsely accused of it because we didn't have no part in that. And then after time passed, I met this girl in my class. Her name was Katrina, and she was like a light skinned girl. She lived in the projects, and we actually exchanged phone numbers, and then we used to call each other and all the time, just talk on the phone and stuff. We're in elementary, and we just tell jokes to each other and stuff like that. Just making small talk, stuff like that. We kind of liked each other and stuff like that. But that happened. Then it was time for the end. A lot of things happen. I'm just touching on certain things. And then it's the end of the year, and we got a graduation to go to. And when we're doing the graduation, my brother he gets the slickest hall walker award. And this is something that the principal put together as a joke. And what it was is they used to catch him a lot of times, uh, trying to cut class and like just hiding in, the hallways and the bathroom and stuff like that. And they used to catch him a lot and just make him go to this class. But the principal, he had a sense of humor and stuff like that. So he decided he was going to do the slickest hall walker award and gave it to my brother. But he wasn't the only one doing it. There was some other guys doing it too. And I don't know. I think the other guys got it too. But it was just showing the principal's sense of humor at the time. When it was calling people's names for certain awards, and they had the slickest hall walker award, everybody started laughing. But anyways, as time passed, we got a lot of friends that we run with, and we have Sean Hall, Bobby Hall, Kerry Holder, Bo Holder, Donovan, and these are some guys that we ran with. Charlie, Wayne, Nick. Nick, he actually lived in a house on Trumbull next to a church. It's made like a castle. And I used to hang out with him pretty tight. And I've stayed over his house on the weekends and stuff like that. And he actually showed me a secret doorway in his bedroom where when they built this house, it's made like a castle many years back, probably in the early 1900s, I would say. And they had actually built where you could open the wall and you could walk behind the walls to the other bedrooms and stuff like that. So, and this part used to belong to the church that was right next door. So, I think he told me that years back, a lot of nuns and stuff like that lived in this house. But as years passed, his mom ended up buying it from the church. and then they just divided it off because it was actually connected to the church years back. But when he showed me them secret walkthroughs behind the walls and stuff like that, I thought that was wicked. And then he was like, wonder what they were doing back in the days where, you have to go to a different room. And I said, well, maybe they made the secret passway so if somebody was going from one room to the next room, nobody would see them in the hallway or something like that. I said, that's the only reason I could think that was made like that. But that was, crazy, when I had seen that. And I don't know if Nick still lives in this house today or not. He might, but I ain't been in contact with him in a long time. But that was just a tripped out house. I remember when I first met him, me and him started hanging out, and he was telling me that his mom and dad was getting a divorce, and his mom ended up divorcing his dad. His dad worked for a cable company at the time in question, and he actually lived. I want to say it was like out West Grand Boulevard or something like that. It's like on the east side, I believe. He had an apartment over there. And me and Nick actually went because he was going with his dad on a weekend one time, and he asked his dad, would it be all right if I go with him? So I went with him to stay over there. And his dad had a little apartment. But anyways, his mom ended up hooking up with with some younger dude that was younger than his dad. He wasn't real young, but he was a lot younger than his dad. And Nick had a lot of problems with him at the beginning. I don't know if they actually, put their difference behind them and stuff as years passed or whatever. But he was telling me that dude, he was having a hard time accepting that dude because that dude was just pretty mean to him right off the top. So I said, well, maybe he'll, cool out as time passes. But one time, some guys had stole Nick's bike out of his yard, and then come to find out it was some other guys that we knew. So one day, Nick's at my house, and James, another friend of mine, James Yates, was at my house. We were just hanging out in the yard. And then this other cat comes from like James's neighborhood. And James lived over on Huron Street. And this other guy comes, and Mike, he comes on this dirt bike. And then Nick says, hey man, that looks like my bike. But it looks like they painted it. So I said, well, let's go check it out. If it's your bike, we're going to take it back. So we go out to the sidewalk, and so what it is, this dude that was riding this bike, Mike, he didn't know the bike was stolen because his brother stole it. So what had happened is they painted the bike, it had pads on the steering wheel and stuff like that, and they painted them. But Nick just walked up to it and unbuttoned the covers that was over the padding, and you could see where it'd been painted. And then he said, Slick, this is my bike, And so we ended up getting his bike back for him. And we just had that dude walk home. And we had just met him a couple times, but it wasn't him that took it. He was just riding it, and he rode it right over to the neighborhood where it got taken from. And that's how Nick got his bike back. But a lot of that went on back in the days where people would see, a kid with a nice bike and stuff, and then as soon as the kid wasn't looking or he rode it to the store or something like that, it would get took. Not unless you chained it up or something like that. But in Nick's case, they took it right off his backyard. And so, anyways, he got his bike back, so that was a good deal right there. And then I used to run around with Sean and Bobby, and they stayed up on Warren and Trumbull. And I remember one time I went to their house and knocking on the door because I was going to see if he wanted to come and hang out. And then there's another apartment in the middle of the hall, another door to another apartment, and the door opens up, and it's Sean. And he's like, "Hey man," he said, "they ain't home right now, but he said, you want to come over here and check out my apartment?" So I said, "Yeah," and I went over there, and then there's this full-grown woman sitting on the couch. And he said, "This is my old lady right here." And I said, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's my old lady." And she was like 30-something years old. And he was, actually, me and him was around about the same age. So he was like, I want to say, he was about 12, maybe 12 years old. And then he was going with the 30-something-year-old lady. But back in them days, a lot of that went on where it's an older woman, but a real young cat. So, and a lot of people didn't frown on that. It was just what was going on back then. And so, he was cheesing. I was laughing about it because I thought it was, something. Now, at this time, I had a girlfriend myself. She wasn't in her 30s by no means, but she was like 16 and I was like 12. But that ain't that bad of an age difference. But she was, built fully grown like a woman, at the age of 16. And everybody used to tell me that girl's too old for you, and stuff like that. But a lot of guys, a lot of young guys went with older girls, but he just took the cake on that because she was like 30-something years old, and so he was kicking it with her for a while. That was something else. Then there was a time when his mom, she's a single mom. She had 3 sons, and she had asked my sister would she watch 2 of them while she went to Kentucky. And so she gave my sister some money, and I think they was going to stay with us for, I think it's a week or 2 weeks or something like that. And then she said, "I'll give you the rest of the money when I get back." But when she got back, she didn't give her the money. So she just told my sister, "Would you come to my house like on Friday?" And my sister would walk all the way from Elm Street all the way to Warren and Trumbull, which is a good walk, and just for the lady to blow her off. Now, we knew these people for a long time, but she blew her off. And she did that a few times. And I remember one time she asked me to walk with her. And I went with her, and then she was like, "Hey, my check didn't come. Can you come in 2 weeks when I get my next check or whatever?" So she basically just kept blowing her off. So I told my sister, I said, "You need to just take that as a loss because it's clear this lady ain't gonna give you the money." Now, whether or not the lady finally paid her in the overtime, I don't know because I've never asked her about it. But I thought that was crazy, because she did the job for her, but then she was blowing her off, didn't want to pay her the rest of the money. So I thought that was crazy. But anyways, during my time going to Edmondson Elementary, we all used to walk to school and walk home. And sometimes my dad would come and pick us up in the car if we had to go somewhere or something like that. But basically, we walked to school and walked home. Whether it was, raining, snow, or summertime. And sometimes if we all seen each other, we'd, walk in a group and go home. But sometimes, we got out of school, we weren't trying to wait on nobody. We just headed home. And I used to cut through the alley by Edmondson Elementary. It's like a half a block off of Trumbull on Canfield. And I would cut through that alley, just a shortcut to get over to Trumbull. And every time I'd go through the alley, there was these two Mexican ladies. And a lot of times they was out in the backyard, and they would always stop me and talk to me. And even as a young man, I just always, had a good heart for women and stuff like that. And especially these women look nice too. I'm a young guy, but these women look good. And anyways, they used to stop me and just talk to me and stuff like that. And sometimes they'd tell me about the man that was living with them. He was abusive, and stuff like that. And these were two sisters. And one was going with the dude, and the other one was just living there. And I don't know. They just used to tell me stories like that. Then they would just ask me how am I doing and all that. Just shooting a breeze. One day I'm walking through the alley, and they stopped me, and they was telling. One of them stopped me, and I asked her where was her sister at, and she said her sister was in jail. And I was like, in jail? What'd she do? And she said, well, we all went to the bar over the weekend, me, my sister, and her old man. And then when we got back, he pulled in the alley because I believe they parked their car behind the house is what the deal was. But he parked in the alley, and he was fighting with her sister in the car. So she says she jumps out of the car, and then she's, walking down the alley, and the man goes after her and just, wanting to hit on her and stuff like that. So this dude was basically abusive, and they used to tell me stories about him hitting them and stuff like that, and I guess, I don't know what his problem was, but this time was his last time he was going to hit him. And because she said what had happened is while he was hitting on her sister, which is his old lady, she was in the car, and she gets in the driver's seat and runs him over with the car and kills him in the alley with the car. And I said, no shit. And she was like, yeah. I said, she gonna be able to get out of jail? And she said, well, I'm working on trying to get her out right now. And that was just a crazy time. And one incident that happened that, you know, that dude, just think if that dude would have treated them ladies right and would have been beating on them and stuff like that, dude probably would have still been alive. You know what I mean? So, the guys that's listening to this that's beating on their ladies or something like that, I'm totally against that. Just know that this kind of stuff could happen. So you might think you got the upper hand because you beat on your woman and all that, but just know that something like this can happen. A number of things can happen, but this is just one incident of many that happen over the years with guys being violent toward their women and stuff like that. So let this be a lesson that if you're doing that, try to clean your act up and try to do right. You know what I mean? Because it might give you longevity in life, you know. But that being said, I don't know if the girl ever got her sister out because I had ended up, you know, moving from Trumbull on down Trumbull to Elm Street. So I kind of lost contact with them girls, you know, because now at this point, dude's dead. The girls probably moved out of the apartment, and you know, so I hope she got her sister out of jail and stuff like that. But if they happen to hear this, they'll know who I am, and they'll remember, you know, uh, the situation. But shout out to them. I hope they're doing well today, and you know, things like that happen, you know. So, and that was just one incident of many. But why I'm living on Elm Street, we used to go around the corner to a beer and wine store to get, you know, our drinks and chips and snacks and stuff like that, and play video games over there, you know. And one time we go around there and there's a whole crowd of people on the side of the store on Butternut Street. And so we're going around there to see what's going on. And there's two girls and they're fighting. I mean, they're really tearing into each other. And they're bloody, their hair's messed up, and they're fighting so bad with each other that they end up falling to the ground and they're still fighting. Then they start banging each other's head on the curb of the road. And they finally just basically get so wore out of fighting and, you know, almost knocked out, you might as well say. And then an ambulance finally pulls up and takes them away. And I knew the one girl, but I didn't know the other girl. I might have seen her in the neighborhood, but I didn't know her. And what this was over one girl trying to go with another girl's boyfriend. And they had lived across the street on Trumbull and Butternut. The girl and the boyfriend did. And the other chick, you know, I'm sure she was from the neighborhood and stuff, but I really didn't know her at the time. I might have seen her, but I didn't know her. And but I always wondered about them girls, is, because they were really messed up. I mean, it was something you'd see out of a movie. And I always wondered if they made it through or what, because I never did see them after that. But I know after that, as time passed, I knew the girl's boyfriend and his brother. And this was Tom Perzanowski. And I forget his brother's name, but his brother had bought I think his brother's name was Mike. And but anyway, his brother bought this moped, and he was like giving people rides on the moped. It had like a part on the front, up above the front tire, where you could ride on the front or you could ride on the back. It's like So he was giving people rides with that because he had just got it, and then he gave me a ride on it, and we rode. He rode all the way to Cobo Hall, and then back, you know, and but that was just some incidents that happened there. And also, right on Trumbull and Elm Street, there used to be this bar right there. It's called the 4J Bar. And the only people going to remember this bar is some old heads, you know what I mean? But this was 4J Bar, and when we was kids, we used to go by it, and they always had the music going and stuff like that. We would always try to look inside there and just, being nosy, just seeing what's going on. And I remember we used to look in there, and it would be there would just be very little light in there. It wouldn't be all lit up. And my friends used to say, I bet there's a lot of stuff goes on in that bar. And then, it stayed open for a while, but it ended up closing. And I really don't know the story behind that, the reason it closed. But we used to always be nosy and look up. Every time we'd go by there, going to the store or whatever, we'd open the door and look off in there. And sometimes people would say, get out of here, stuff like that. But that was a trip. And at the time, we had a friend that lived over there on Canfield and Trumbull. And what had happened with him is he had was trying to help push this car. Actually, we all was pushing the car because it got stuck in the mud. And then he had got his foot ran over by the car. And then the dude that owned the car was a dude named Dave Lightning. He had a purple Gremlin. And but he ran over dude's foot, which was Sean. And he wanted to make it up to him, so he went and got him 2 quarts of Miller beer, and this, just to basically apologize for doing it. But this, the dude was a grown dude, but the guy that got his foot ran over, he was just like 12 years old, and the guy bought him 2 quarts of Millers to drink. It was crazy. But that dude wasn't no law-abiding citizen by no means. That Dave Lightning dude, he was something else. A lot of people didn't like him at the beginning, but, as time passed, people got used to him and stuff like that. But nobody really engaged with him that much. I think Sean and Kerry is the main 2 that would kick it with him, more than normal, for whatever reason. But that was later on. That dude had a cast on his foot and crutches. So I think it broke his foot. That was something else. But just all kind of different things happen in the neighborhood. I remember when I had moved to a different neighborhood. I'm just jumping around here, but I moved to a different neighborhood, and my friend Bo, he was telling me that for another friend of ours, Charlie, had got sent to prison, and I asked him what happened, and he said a girl that he was going with made up a story on him, and ended up sending him to jail. And then he said that Charlie was actually writing him letters, so obviously he had their address. And he was writing them letters telling them, what really happened and all that. And I was like, that's crazy, man. And so, and I don't know the whole story about it. I'm just going on what Bo told me. But I thought that, he got a bum rap for that. And but hopefully today he's doing all right. This is my ex-girlfriend's cousin. My ex-girlfriend was Jackie. That was the girl that was 16 when I was about, man, I don't even think I was 12. I think I was 11 when I was going with her. And a lot of people used to try to say she was too old for me and stuff like that. But anyways, Charlie's the one that hooked me and her up. And that's how I started going with her.